According to Wikipedia, typology in Christian theology and in biblical exegesis is a doctrine or theory concerning the relationship of the Old Testament to the New Testament. Typology is very useful for grasping truths about the Catholic faith, because it is both at the same time simple and profound. Through typology, people, places, and events from the Old Testament are seen as a foreshadowing or a prefigurement of people, places, and events in the New Testament. Typology uses storytelling to deepen our understanding about the Catholic faith. And this is much like the approach that our Lord took to explaining truth, as he spoke in parables and in stories so that everyone could understand. Please listen prayerfully and open your hearts to see the typological prefigurements that lie waiting for us in the Old Testament. Before we examine how the Lateran Treaty was prefigured in the Old Testament by King Cyrus and King Xerxes' edicts, I would like to offer an idea. The Old Testament contains the entire history of the Israelites. The Israelites were the Old Testament people of God. Their entire history, from their inception until their ending, is completely contained in the books of the Old Testament. Similarly, the New Testament is the entire history of the new people of God, the Catholic Church. The New Testament really contains our entire history from start to finish. However, the difference is that for the Israelites, their history is entirely recorded in the Bible. Our history is still being lived out. We are still in the New Testament, even though our history is not recorded entirely in the Bible. With that concept in mind, it becomes clear why the Lateran Treaty would be prefigured in the pages of the Old Testament. If the Old prefigures the New, then events in the history of the Church would be prefigured by the Old Testament. It's not just people, places, and events from the pages of the books of the New Testament, but the actual history of our Church that comprises the actual New Testament. Now we are ready to look at how the Lateran Treaty is prefigured by the edicts of King Cyrus and King Xerxes. In the Old Testament, the nation of Israel was divided when the 10 tribes split under the rebellion of Jeroboam. After the 10 tribes separated themselves from the covenant, they became an enemy of Judah and the Davidic kingdom. Soon, other foreign powers rose to challenge the divided nation of Israel. Assyria rose to power, followed by Babylon. The Babylonian king, Nebuchadnezzar, came once to Jerusalem and took away prisoners, including Daniel the prophet. This occurred, depending on what source you use, in 607 BC. 10 years later, King Nebuchadnezzar returned and besieged the city of Jerusalem, which fell on the second day of Adar in 597 BC. Finally, 10 years later, in the year 587 BC, the temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, and the rest of the Jews were taken to Babylon as captives. Only the lowly remained to work the land. All the skilled Jews, nobles, and citizenry were moved to Babylon. Here is a biblical quote concerning the first wave of captives taken by Nebuchadnezzar. From the book of Daniel, chapter 1, verses 1 to 6. In the 3rd year of the reign of Joachim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered into his hands Joachim, the king of Judah, and part of the vessels of the house of God, and he carried them away into the land of Sennaar, to the house of his God, and the vessels he brought into the treasury house of his God. Now there were among them of the children of Judah Daniel, Ananias, Mishael, and Azarias. Here is another biblical quote concerning the second and complete wave of captives taken by Nebuchadnezzar. This occurred at the time when he destroyed the walls of Jerusalem and the temple. From the 2nd book of Kings, chapter 24, verse 14. And he, Nebuchadnezzar, carried away all Jerusalem and all the princes and all the valiant men of the army, to the number of 10,000 into captivity, and every artificer and smith, and none were left, but the poor sort of people of the land. According to Jeremiah's prophecy, the Jews were to remain in Babylon for 70 years. This was fulfilled when King Cyrus, the Medo-Persian king, conquered Babylon, and in the year 537 BC, again depending on what source you use, he issued a decree for the Jews to go back to their land and rebuild their temple. The day the temple was consecrated was the 3rd day of Adar, in the year 517 BC. The time of the first wave of refugees, Daniel being among them, in 607 BC, and Cyrus's decree to rebuild Jerusalem is 70 years. And this is obtained by taking the year 607 BC and subtracting the year 537 BC, which is 70 years. Additionally, the date that Nebuchadnezzar came and destroyed the temple was in 587 BC. The consecration of the completed Second Temple took place on the 3rd day of Adar, 517 BC. If you take 587 BC and subtract 517 BC, you also have 70 years. From the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verses 10 through 14. For thus saith the Lord, when the 70 years shall begin to be accomplished in Babylon, I will visit you, and I will perform many good word in your favor, to bring you again to this place. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of affliction, to give an end and patience. And you shall call upon me, and you shall go, and you shall pray to me, and I will hear you. You shall seek me, and shall find me, when you shall seek me with all your heart. And I will be found by you, saith the Lord, and I will bring back your captivity, and I will gather you out of all nations, and from all the places to which I have driven you out, saith the Lord. And I will bring you back from the place to which I caused you to be carried away captive. King Cyrus also gave them a large sum of money to purchase the material they needed for the temple. However, although King Cyrus showed clemency to the Jews, they were still a vassal state of the Persian Empire and owed him their allegiance. King Cyrus and his kingdom had total control, and the people of Jerusalem had to stay in their place and not interfere with King Cyrus. According to Josephus, a very reputable ancient historian, when Cyrus granted the Jews return to rebuild the temple, he mandated that they pray for him and the Persian Empire during their sacrifices in the temple. The priests shall also offer these sacrifices according to the laws of Moses in Jerusalem, and when they offer them, they shall pray to God for the preservation of the king and of his family, and the kingdom of Persia may continue. From the book of Ezra, chapter 6, verse 3. In the first year of Cyrus the king, the king decreed that the house of God should be built, which is in Jerusalem, in the place where they may offer sacrifices, and that they lay the foundations that may support the height of 80 cubits and the breadth of 80 cubits. Again, from the book of Ezra, chapter 3, verse 7, and they gave money to hewers of stones and to masons, and meat and drink, and oil to the Sidonians and Tyrians, to bring cedar trees from Lebanon to the Sea of Joppa, according to the orders which King Cyrus of Persia had given them. And from the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, verses 1 and 2, Thus saith the Lord to my anointed Cyrus, whose right hand I have taken hold of, to subdue nations before his face, and to turn the backs of kings, and to open the doors before them, and the gates shall not be shut. I will go before thee, and I will humble the great ones of the earth. I will break in pieces the gates of brass, and will burst the bars of iron. King Cyrus was eventually succeeded by King Xerxes. King Xerxes issued a decree that the walls of Jerusalem were to be rebuilt. Until then, the inhabitants of Jerusalem were without a border to control. They were vulnerable to whomever wanted to walk into their city and attack them. After the walls were constructed, they became a fully functional city-state, able to regulate themselves completely and control what came into their city by using the gates at the walls. From the book of Nehemiah, chapter 1, And they said to me, They that have remained, and are left of the captivity there in the province, are in great affliction and reproach. And the wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and the gates thereof are burnt with fire. And from Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 7 to 8, And I said to the king, If it seem good to the king, let him give me letters to the governors of the country beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come into Judea. And a letter to Asphath, the keeper of the king's forest, to give me timber, that I may cover the gates of the tower of the house, and the walls of the city, and the house that I shall enter into. And the king gave me according to the good hand of my God with me. Now Nehemiah was appointed governor of Jerusalem. He and Ezra the high priest read aloud the book of the law to all of Jerusalem, and brought those laws to bear on all of Jerusalem. The book of the law was found in the temple by King Josiah prior to Cyrus's edict. From the book of Nehemiah, chapter 8, verses 1 to 3, And the 7th month came, and the children of Israel were in their cities, and all the people were gathered together as one man to the street which is before the water gate. And they spoke to Esdras the scribe to bring the book of the law of Moses, which the Lord had commanded to Israel. Then Esdras the priest brought the law before the multitude of men and women, and all those that could understand, in the first day of the 7th month. And he read it plainly in the street that was before the water gate, from the morning until midday, before the men and the women, and all those that could understand. And the ears of all the people were attentive to the book. Now that we have the Old Testament stories in place, we can move on to the stories from the New Testament. In particular, the events leading up to and surrounding the confiscation of the Papal States, and the subsequent Lateran Treaty, which gave the Church a small portion of their land back, along with other considerations. Christendom was divided by the Protestant Revolt. After the Protestants split with the Church, Protestant countries opposed Catholic countries in many ways, including warfare. Soon, new beliefs and ideologies arose in Europe, threatening the spiritual authority of the Church. New empires like the French Revolution and Napoleon threatened and ended the Holy Roman Empire and its line of kings. Gradually, the Catholic Church lost its land across Europe, culminating with the taking of the Papal States. The Papal States were taken in part in 1860, but were finally taken completely in 1870. From that point on, the popes referred to themselves as prisoners in the Vatican. A wave of immorality flooded into Rome, now that the Church no longer controlled its laws and its territory. The French Revolution proved as disastrous for the temporal territories of the papacy as it was for the Roman Church in general. In 1791, the Comtat, Venaissin, and Avignon were annexed by France. Later, with the French invasion of Italy in 1796, the legations, the Papal States' northern territories, were seized and became part of the Cisalpine Republic. In 1860, with much of the region already in rebellion against papal rule, Sardinia-Piedmont conquered the eastern two-thirds of the Papal States and cemented its hold on the south. Bologna, Ferrara, Umbria, and Marches, Benevento, and Pontecorvo were all formally annexed by November of the same year. While considerably reduced, the Papal States nevertheless still covered the Latium and large areas northwest of Rome. By 1861, much of the Papal States' territories had been conquered by the Kingdom of Italy. Only Lazio, including Rome, remained under the Pope's temporal control. In 1870, the Pope lost Lazio and Rome and had no physical territory at all, not even the Vatican. Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini solved the crisis between unified Italy and the Vatican by signing the Lateran Treaty, granting the Vatican city-state sovereignty. A prisoner in the Vatican, or prisoner of the Vatican, is how Pope Pius IX was described following the capture of Rome by the armed forces of the Kingdom of Italy on the 20th of September 1870. For the next 59 years, the popes refused to leave the Vatican in order to avoid any appearance of accepting the authority wielded by the Italian government over Rome as a whole. During this period, popes also refused to appear at St. Peter's Square or at the balcony of the Vatican Basilica facing it, as the square in front of the basilica was occupied by Italian troops. During this period, popes granted the Urbi and Orbi blessing from the balcony facing a courtyard, or from inside the basilica, and papal coronations were instead held at the Sistine Chapel. The period ended in 1929 when the Lateran Treaty created the modern state of Vatican City. The initial confiscation of the Papal States by the United Kingdom of Italy first took place in 1860. The remaining Papal States were confiscated from the Pope and the Church in 1870, and for the next 59 years the popes wouldn't leave the Vatican, until finally in 1929 they signed the Lateran Treaty. Thus, it was 69 years, from 1860 to 1929, from the initial confiscation and the returning to the Church a very small portion of her land, just Vatican City. Vatican City is a sovereign country. It is a city-state as recognized by international law. Now, let's analyze relevant portions of the Lateran Treaty. The Lateran Treaty has two primary parts. The first part is the Conciliation Treaty, while the second part is the Concordat. Both parts constitute the Lateran Pacts of 1929. I encourage you to read the whole Lateran Treaty for reference. As far as formal treaties go, the Lateran Treaty isn't too hard to read. A link to the Lateran Treaty is provided in the description section of this video on YouTube. Here are some portions of the Lateran Treaty that are relevant to our video. From the Conciliation section of the Lateran Pacts, Article 3, Italy recognizes the full ownership, exclusive dominion, and sovereign authority and jurisdiction of the Holy See over the Vatican, as at present constituted, together with all its appurtenances and endowments, thus creating the Vatican City, for the special purpose and under the conditions hereinafter referred to. The boundaries of the said city are set forth in a map called Annex 1 of the present treaty, of which it forms an integral part. Article 24 states, in regard to the sovereignty appertaining to it also in international matters, the Holy See declares that it desires to take and shall take no part in any temporal rivalries between other states, nor in any international congresses called to settle such matters, save and except in the event of such parties making a mutual appeal to the pacific mission of the Holy See, the latter reserving in any event the right of exercising its moral and spiritual power. The Vatican City shall thereafter be invariably and in every event considered a neutral and inviolable territory. Now here is an excerpt from the Concordat, just the financial convention section. Article 1. Italy, on the exchange of ratifications of the treaty, shall pay to the Holy See the sum of Italian lira 750 million, and at the same time consign Italian 5% bonds with coupons June 30th of the nominal value of Italian lira 1 million. And finally, here are some excerpts from the main body of the Concordat section of the Lateran Treaty. Article 12. On Sundays and feasts of precepts in the churches, which have a chapter, the celebrant shall sing at the conventional Mass according to the norm of the sacred liturgy, a prayer for the prosperity of the King of Italy and for the Italian state. Article 20 states that bishops, before taking possession of their diocese, shall take an oath of fidelity to the head of the state according to the following formula. Before God and His holy Gospels, I swear and promise on becoming a bishop, fidelity to the Italian state. I swear and promise to respect and make respected by my clergy the king and the government established according to the constitutional laws of the state. I swear and promise, moreover, that I shall not participate in any agreement or any council that can damage the Italian state and the public order, and I shall not allow to my clergy such participation. I shall concern myself with the well-being and interests of the Italian state and endeavor to avert any danger that can possibly menace it. And then Article 34 states that the Italian state, wishing to restore to the institution of matrimony, which is the foundation of the family, the dignity which is conformable with the Catholic traditions of its people, recognizes the civil effects of the sacrament of matrimony regulated by canon law. And then Article 36 states, Italy, considering the teachings of Christian doctrine according to the form received by Catholic tradition as the foundation and the crown of public instruction, agrees that religious instruction imparted in the public elementary schools shall have a further development in the secondary schools, according to a program to be established by an accord between the Holy See and the state. There are many more relevant sections of the Lateran Treaty. However, they are not included in this video. See the link in the description section of this video for the entire text of the Lateran Treaty. And then finally, it's worth noting in passing that the first ever codified book of canon law for the Latin Rite was first assembled and published in 1917, just prior to the Lateran Treaty. From Wikipedia, the first code of canon law was almost exclusively for the Latin Church, with extremely limited application to the Eastern churches. After recounting the Old Testament story of the return of the Jews to their land, and the New Testament story of the Church's return to sovereign territory with the Lateran Treaty, we can highlight the many parallels between the two. The prophet Jeremiah prophesied that the Jews would be in exile for 70 years. This was fulfilled, and they returned to Jerusalem at the appointed time. The papal states surrounding Rome were first confiscated in 1860, and then finally in 1870. It wouldn't be until 1929 that the church would be granted land again. This is a time span of 69 years. Almost 70 years. The Jews were almost all taken away as prisoners to Babylon. Babylon was a city filled with strange and profane customs and beliefs. The popes between 1870 and 1929 didn't leave the Vatican and were referred to as prisoners in the Vatican. After the Church lost control of the city of Rome, she lost control of the laws and happenings in the city as well. King Cyrus financed the return of the Jews from Babylon to Jerusalem. He also paid for the materials to rebuild the temple and for the sustenance of the leaders of Jerusalem. The Lateran Treaty gave 750 million lira to the Vatican, along with bonds providing for future revenues. King Cyrus mandated that at the temple sacrifices, the Jews would pray for him, his family, and the preservation of the Persian Empire. The Lateran Treaty mandated that on Sundays and feast days of the churches of Italy pray for the king and the welfare of the Italian state. With the decree to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem by King Xerxes, the Jews gained complete sovereignty of the city-state of Jerusalem. They no longer had a kingdom, but just their holy city. The Lateran Treaty gave the Vatican complete sovereignty of the newly constituted Vatican City. The Church no longer had any claim to any of the papal states, but just had control over the new Vatican City-State. Even though the Jews had sovereignty over their city-state of Jerusalem, they were a vassal state of the Persian Empire and had to give the Persian Empire their allegiance. They weren't autonomous to operate outside the boundaries of their city. The Church had sovereignty over Vatican City, but upon taking up a diocese, a bishop had to swear an oath of allegiance to the Italian state. The treaty also mandated that the Vatican stay out of international affairs and just concern itself with spiritual matters. Nehemiah and Ezra read aloud the book of the law, which had been discovered prior to the edict of King Cyrus. Nehemiah and Ezra promulgated and upheld the law of Moses so as to make it a way of life for the Jews after their return from exile. The Lateran Treaty established that the Catholic faith would become the state religion of Italy. It recognized the feast days of the Church, outlawed divorce, and provided for religious instruction in state-run schools. It made specific mention of canon law that would regulate the civil laws. The first ever codified book of canon law was published in 1917, just prior to the Church returning to some of her land. In the book of Ezra, chapter 6, verse 15, it states that the temple was finished on the 3rd day of the month of Adar. This was the day that the Jewish people finally got their temple back, after having it destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar. The Lateran Treaty was signed on February 11, 1929. This treaty gave the Church her land back, but it also gave her back the buildings on that land. From 1870 to 1929, the Church didn't even own the buildings they were residing in. If you convert the date of February 11th, 1929, into a date on the Jewish calendar, it comes up as the 1st day of Adar, almost the same exact day that the Jews got their temple back as well.